TCU took the belt from BYU 44-13 on Saturday night in Provo, falling to 6-4 on the season. We've got a special guest on the show tonight to break all of that down and more on this episode of Frogs Insider. Hey, Frog fans, welcome into another episode of Frogs Insider. I am Jamie Plunkett. Here, as always, Melissa Treebwasser not in studio with us this evening. She's on her way back from Raleigh, North Carolina, where she got to see the women's basketball team take on and take down top 10 program NC State 69-59 to move to 4-0 on the season. Very good win for the Horned Frogs. Marta Suarez, game high 26 points. Olivia Miles, 15.14 rebound, double-double. Her second consecutive double-double for the Horned Frogs. Really good win for Mark Campbell and his crew. In her stead, though, we have a very fun guest on the show. Anthony Alabi, former TCU offensive lineman, former NFL offensive lineman, and pretty prolific television actor over the last 15 years or so. You know him from shows like Netflix Originals Family Reunion, as well as making appearances on Modern Family, NCIS, Shameless, and Blackish all along the way. Anthony, thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday evening to hop on the show with me.
Well, I mean, when you intro me like that, of course, we can do this every Sunday. I could use the
Yeah.
boost.
Well, I'll make the intro longer and longer every time you hop
Yeah,
back on. How about
no,
that?
I appreciate it. No, thank you.
Oh,
Great to
I'm
be here.
glad to have you here, man. And we're going to get into this BYU SmackDown a little bit over the course of the show, but I wanted to start with something a little bit more upbeat and
Okay.
fun for our listenership, which is, you were kind of at the ground floor of this resurrection of TCU football. Got here in 1999, I believe, 2000, right
Yep.
around there,
99. Yeah.
and played along the defensive line before he moved over to the offensive line, and kind of one of the original guys in the trenches as TCU started this now 25-year journey back to relevance. Really did get in on the ground floor, if you will. So wanted to start with just hearing a little bit about your experience. I know you started at the Naval Academy and then transferred to TCU, one of the original kind of transfer guys, I guess, maybe. But
Yeah.
just what was your experience like at TCU? How did you end up at TCU? And just a little bit about your experience
Yeah.
there.
It was a wild journey just based on the fact that I was at the Naval Academy. I went to a small private school in high school, so in San Antonio, and so there was a lot of recruiting going on. But when it came to offer time, I didn't get a ton of offers, and so I got offered by Navy and I got offered by UTEP, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to Navy, and so it felt great. Everything was fine. And I loved the Navy, but it was just the fact that the only win that mattered was beating Army, and I just couldn't do it. I was too
Mm.
competitive, and I couldn't do it. So I left, and Auburn was a school, one of the last ones to recruit me. So I applied to Auburn. They accepted me, but they didn't start school until March, and this was November at the time, and I wanted to kind of like leave. So I called up TCU. I said, "Hey, do you guys have anything, in form of scholarships or a partial scholarship or something that I could possibly use to get into school?" And the only reason I did that is because my best friends at the time were going to TCU. So I was like, I'll go to TCU. And if I don't play football anymore, then that's just what it is. And so they were like, nope, all of our scholarships are gone. Everything's done. Sorry. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And that was going to be the end of it. And right before I hung up the phone, I hear, wait, 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 wait. And I was like, yeah. And they go, what are your measurables so we can have you in the system just in case anything comes up. And at the time at Navy, you're running 3.5 miles like every day during boot camp. And so I had lost a ton of weight. I think it was the defensive end that was down to like 250,
Okay.
247, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I lied and I was like, 6'6", 280. And the guy goes, what? And I go, 6'6", 280. Hold on. 15 minutes later, Coach Stan Egan, I think he was the D-line coach, and he's like, Anthony, how you doing? And and talking to me, and I remember you, and oh, okay, well, what happened at Navy? And so then waited another 15, 20 minutes. Coach Fran comes on, Anthony, I don't know why they all sound the same, but they do. Uh, and so he comes on, we talk a little bit, and I end up at TCU. They put together something for me to come. And I was joking with Sink the other day when I visited campus that when I first walked into the locker room, my name was misspelled on a torn piece of notebook paper, and I was number 77 on my locker. And what a whirlwind of a change to go from that to being part of one of the most productive offenses in TCU history, being a part of an offensive line that was just I felt fortunate to be a part of, and luckily I got here in '99, which was LT's last year, and that was when the big uglies were there. It was
Mhm.
you had Bobo and Keithley and Gordon, all those guys, and so they kind of taught me and taught us that mentality, and we kind of carried that all throughout our tenure, which I'm so grateful for.
So you made this transition in college, which I think has to be a pretty challenging one to move from the defensive line across the trenches to the offensive line. We've seen that in reverse with current Horned Frog Connor Lindgren, who was an offensive lineman originally and now is along that kind of defensive interior. But what did it take to make that transition? When did you decide to make that move? And what were some of the key challenges you faced?
I mean, look, growing up as a kid, defense always seemed more exciting, right? Because you have the tackles, you have the big hits, you can do all these things. Somebody telling you that you're going to be an offensive lineman was such a like, oh, okay. But I think the best thing, it wasn't so much my mentality changing as much as Coach Fran just having the foresight and seeing the kind of mentality that I had and the kind of personality that I had and matching that to, I think you'd be best here. And I remember that conversation. It was right before practice, and he was like, listen, I think as a defensive lineman, you'd probably play for us pretty quickly, but I think you have a pretty low ceiling. I don't see you kind of moving past college. And he said, but if you move to an offensive line position, I think there's a potential for a scholarship. And I think that you have the ability and the intangibles to go to the next level. And all I heard was scholarship. So I was like, yeah, let's do that. I'll do that today. And so I moved over, and I remember the worst part about moving was the D line teasing you the entire time. Now that you're an offensive lineman and you're wearing those big braces, so the first person that wanted a piece of me, quote unquote, was Aaron Schobel, and
Oh
I think
yeah,
we all
okay.
know who
Well,
Aaron Schobel
nice
is.
first challenge, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I was like, this is perfect. And so I'm at left tackle spot. Aaron Schobel's, he's lined up, and that hand is up in the air, shaking, ready to kind of just tee off on me. And I remember Keithley came over and he goes, listen, I don't care what you do. Set as quick as you can, use those long arms and shoot them. If you miss, it's fine. Just do it. And I remember they hiked the ball. I set as quick as I can. I think I closed my eyes and I shot my arms out. And I looked up and he was on the ground. And I helped him up, and he took his helmet off, and he looked at coach and he said, give him a scholarship. And I think I had a scholarship a couple days later. So
That's quite the
it
endorsement,
just
man.
it was a huge endorsement. So much so that when we played the Bills when I was in Miami, he came up to me after one of the plays, put me in a headlock, and was like, "You owe me money." So I said, "All right, all right." No, it was but that was the experience. It was a great experience.
Well, we've seen this. We've seen this at TCU over the years, where a guy gets to TCU, maybe has the conversation with the coach. Maybe it's just handed a number where they are changing. Jerry Hughes is another great example. A
Yeah.
guy who was a quarterback in high school and has had such a prolific NFL career as a defensive edge, hybrid linebacker position.
Hmm.
But once you got your feet under you as an offensive lineman and realized that that change was really truly for the best, and started to see maybe your ceiling rise,
Right.
what was the feeling like towards Coach Fran and the offensive staff, and just I don't know, I guess just what was that kind of realization like for you that, hey, there's legitimate possibility of going to the next level?
It was as that kind of went on, and I practiced as an offensive lineman, and then later on Coach Fran left and Coach P came in, and kind of just becoming a big part of that offense. It's I'll say it the way anybody else says it. It feels good to be good at something. And I think what I started to find was, even though I was young in the position and I was kind of raw in terms of football as a whole, I played, private school football, and I didn't start till like high school, like later in high school. And so I didn't have kind of that little league Pop Warner growing up with the culture. So it took a lot of catching up for me, especially switching positions. And that being said, the more I learned and the better that I got at playing tackle, at understanding not just the X's and O's of an offense, but understanding the essence of an offense. Like, why are we running this play? Not so much because we just want to go here and you have this guy and you have this guy, but the essence of, we're trying to get this. We're trying to do X to the defense. We're trying to make Y happen later in the game. And understanding the chess of it, it became a whole different ballgame. And I fell in love with it. And I started to really see the excitement in being an offensive lineman and going a whole season and not giving up a sack, or when the time comes and it's 4th and 1 and we're on the goal line and you're sitting in front of 80K, you have the coach is like, go behind the lobby. Like, that's what you want to hear. And those are
Mhm.
the things that kind of motivate you and get you going. And you want to be better because then you get offended when your number is not called and they want to, and there's a goal line run. And you're like, why'd you go that way? Go this way. So I think that for me, the fulfillment of kind of where they wanted me to go and reaching potential was the biggest boost for me and kept me kind of hungry and motivated to learn more and do more and not to want to let the other guys down, because I think that's the special part of being an offensive lineman is you're not one guy, it's an entire unit. And so when you have the respect and the trust of the four other guys that are on that line with you, I mean, you get a good offensive line, it's like a work of art. I mean, it's pretty unstoppable.
We're gonna revisit this part of the conversation when we get into the game here in just a few minutes, because I think that there's some challenges that the current TCU offensive line is facing. Part of which is a lot of these guys haven't played a lot in some of these
Yeah.
positions. A lot of these guys are still relative. Carson Bruno made his first start at right tackle in his career
Mm,
last night, and so there's some challenges that maybe we're seeing that are related to that along the current
yeah.
offensive line. But before we get into that, just one more question for you related to the NFL. You drafted in the fifth round by Miami, spent some time with Kansas City and Tampa Bay as well. Do you have any kind of distinct or definitive memories from your time in the NFL where you had the chance to maybe take a brief moment and just realize, hey, I am playing in the NFL right now?
Yeah. I'd say game one. The first one we were in the Hall of Fame game with Nick Saban. He was my
Okay.
coach. And I just remember,
I did not put the timelines together that Saban was your coach
oh
at
yeah,
Miami.
I had him for
Okay.
2 years.
All
And I
right.
mean we'll get into my hatred for Alabama because they took two of my coaches. So we'll get into that. It's a special kind. But we played in the Hall of Fame game in Miami, and I remember we were playing the Chicago Bears. And growing up in the '80s, the Chicago Bears were everything. That was the team. And so getting on that field for pregame warmups and looking across the way and seeing that C on the helmets, I freaked out. I was just like, this like can I should I be here? The imposter syndrome
Mm,
was on a
yeah.
thousand. It was ridiculous. And so I remember Coach Saban coming up and putting his arm around me and he goes, look around now, take it all in. Those are the Chicago Bears. You are playing those guys. That's who you're going to hit tonight. That's what's going on. And then as soon as the game starts, your eyes don't go above this level. Like right where the field and the stadium meet, like they don't leave that level. You stay right here. And that helped a ton. It did, because it gave me kind of a step by step of like, okay, this is where my mentality needs to be. This is what I need to do. And then from there, you just kind of learn to kind of be a professional, and it becomes old hat after a while, which is unfortunate because it's such a cool thing to be a kid looking at NFL teams. Then all of a sudden you look across the way and the Dallas Cowboys are sitting there and you're like, whoa, okay, here we go, and you
Yeah.
still have to play the game. And for me, that was huge. I mean, there's tons of other stories. Hitting Ray Lewis, for the first time, and I got a sweet block on him and knocked him on his ass, and then he popped up and he's like, "Now we're playing football," and I was like, "Oh shit, okay, this is real." But yeah, so many moments, but that sticks out to me as one of the first to really introduce me to the NFL.
Okay, so we are going to stop down and talk about Nick Saban for a second, because you had the privilege, I suppose, of being coached by Gary Patterson and by Nick Saban, and
Great coaches,
they are two people who are at the top of their craft, masters of their craft, on the
absolutely
defensive side of the football,
geniuses.
and they're pretty close in real life as well. They've got a strong connection, from what
Hmm.
I understand. So just can you talk about being coached by both of those men, and then maybe some of their similarities that made them both great?
Yeah, I mean, the similar thing between Coach Saban and Coach Patterson is the fire, and I think you can see that. I mean, they both are. I mean, if you catch a still of both of them on the sideline, I mean, it's Al Pacino and The Devil's Advocate, or it's just that fiery, like
Yeah.
just and that's them. And there's a lot of intensity, there's a lot of focus, and there's a lot of um, goal-driven objectives. And so I think one, they're similar in that way. The other way that I found them very similar was that they very much cared about the mentality of their team and the mentality of their players. Nick, before anyone was doing it, was bringing in therapists for us to talk to, was wanting to know what motivates us, what's going on with you, like why do you feel this, do you feel that. I remember he implemented a day during practice once where he just felt like the team needed to I don't know if I can curse on here or not, so I'm
Yeah,
just
you're fine.
but he felt like the team needed to bitch a bit, and he was like, you guys need to get it out, cool. And the first, I think it was like the first 15 to 20 minutes of practice, it was no consequences, is what he said. So you can say whatever you wanted to any coach. You can like let it all out. And to be honest with you, it was the best practice we had. And I think that is something that they both did very well. They had this ability to read their teams and know exactly what was needed, no matter how unorthodox. They were like, this is what's needed right now. People would look at them like, you're crazy, and then all of a sudden it would work, and they're like, you're a genius, and of course. But that, so I found a lot in that, and just like with anybody who's passionate and has a lot of fire to them, and who's motivated, you're going to butt heads a lot. And I think that's what happens with Nick and Gary. I think they both have this ability to butt heads with their staff, butt heads with their players, not in a way that's contentious, or I just want to make you feel this way, or put you down. It's more of in a way of these are arguments of passion, arguments of what should we do. And I think they expect you to fight back a little bit. And if you don't, it's a bit disappointing.
Mm.
Right. So I think in that way, I appreciated both. And it helped me, to be honest with you. Getting Nick Saban as my first head coach in the NFL, I was like, oh, I know this. I know this type of guy. I know this type of team. So it was incredible to kind of be a part of that. The other part of it is their genius. The things that they can do, or the things that they read in defenses, it's pretty wild. I remember Nick would often come into the offensive meeting rooms, and he'd just sit in the back, and he would just pick apart a defense for us. And he would go, "This is what they're going to do. They're going to try and do this." This, and we'd self audit all the time. We check our own tendencies to try and see, and he would just set things up like a master tactician. He would just kind of, we're going to do this the first half of the season, or the first 4 games, and then we're going to show them this because we're going to bring this back at the end of the season. I mean, he break up the season in different. I mean, it was just such a chess game that I learned all that. And for me, which is something I took into acting, I was like, in order for me to keep up with this guy, like, I need to make sure that I just know my plays by default. Just right off the bat, I just need to make sure that I know my plays. And the same way with acting, you need to know your lines. Like, gas stations have gas. These are basic things that, like, at the very least, I need to know these things, so that way, whatever he manipulates or whatever he brings in, I can perform for him. And we'll talk more about that later when I talk about, adjusting in the second half. But that's a big thing that they both did. And I never wanted to let them down. I never wanted to let the team down.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. And I was going to ask, is there anything that you took from that experience of being coached by him into the next next chapter of your life? And it sounds like just being prepared at the very
Preparation.
baseline is the more you are prepared and the more you understand the definition of your role and what's expected of you, the more success you're going to have and the more success your team is going to have.
Absolutely. He would Preparation is speed, is what he would say all the time. You want to
Mm,
play fast, you got to be prepared.
excellent. Uh, Fantastic. Fantastic stuff, Anthony. Let's jump into something that's maybe a little less than fantastic, and that is BYU 44, TCU 13. It's the third biggest margin of defeat in the Sonny Dykes era, behind that one game at the end of 2022 and then Kansas State in Manhattan in
Yeah.
2023. Really, just from the jump, felt like TCU was a little bit outgunned in this game. They were the
Yeah.
less physical team, they were the less energized team. And it is a disturbing trend, really, from TCU over the last 3 seasons now, of inconsistently being ready to play football. And it really bit them in a big way. This is 2 weeks in a row now where TCU still had a lot to play for and came out flat. They've scored 30 total points in their last 2 football games. And let's start with, you're the subject matter expert here on being an offensive lineman. TCU's offensive line has had consistent struggles in being inconsistent.
Yeah.
And just whether it's not being able to block up the run, not consistently being able to keep Josh Hoover clean in the pocket, the shuffling. We've seen 2 left tackles now, 3 left tackles really this season. We just
Mhm.
saw our third right tackle of the season There are two guys rotating at right guard. We've seen multiple people play center and left guard. How much does that kind of revolving door of offensive linemen contribute to the challenges we're seeing up front along the offensive line?
I for me, here's what I know. I know that in order to win football games, it starts in the trenches. Now that sounds like a cliche, but it's an absolute fact. Offensive line is not like D line where there's a constant rotation, a constant subbing in and out after a couple of plays. I've been a part of teams that tried that philosophy with the offensive line and it never worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it doesn't work out is because by definition, an offensive line is consistent. It has to be consistent. Consistency means everything. As a matter of fact, when you're a backup offensive lineman, they say the best thing you can do is have no one notice that you came in. That's the best thing that can happen. So for me, when I hear that an offensive line has been switched out, you have guys moving all over the place, you have this person coming in, that person coming in, that doesn't help anyone because the guys that I played with, the person I lined up next to, whether that was John Gludd or Shane Sims or Victor Payne or any of those guys, for the length of time that I played with them, there was a knowledge that you have, an unwritten or an unspoken kind of connection that you have where you know what they're going to do. They know what you're going to do. You feel them out. You understand their tendencies. You understand their weaknesses. And I think that only comes with cohesion, and you only build cohesion through consistent play together. So, right there, right off the bat, that tells me that's the issue that the offensive line is having is that we need to do something in the offseason where we up their regimen, whether that's like health, nutrition, whatever it is, to get them healthy so they can last through a season. And the other part of it is I feel like TCU needs to prioritize their offensive line. The inconsistency and all of those things, you're telling me that you're not looking, they got some guys from the portal, but you're not looking in the right places. You're not making it a priority to have your offensive line be where it's at. And I'll throw in the defensive line too, to have your line be the base of your team. If you look at teams like Indiana, you look at teams like Texas Tech, they spent that money on line. The
Mm-hmm.
linemen were the most important thing because the team goes as the line goes. Because the way that trickles down is if TCU had an offensive line right now that was up to snuff, that was able to do the job, you now have a run threat. And when you have a run threat, it'll open up that air raid and that big 11 personnel and let's spread the ball, let's throw downfield, let's get that Hoover McAllister thing going. That all works. And does it work now? Absolutely. It absolutely works, but that's the only thing you have working.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want the other facets to kind of, or the other weapons to be able to be used, you have to have a secondary threat. If not, teams are going to do what they did last night, which is pin their ears back, try to get you in a third and long situation, and then just either confuse you or come and hit you in the mouth. And I think
Yeah.
that's the problem that you have when you don't have an offensive line that can produce a threat in a run game or have the ability to keep them clean, even because the defense knows what's coming. So it's easy for them to kind of like get a running head start at an offensive line, and they're on their heels already because we're throwing, we know we're throwing, the stadium knows we're throwing, So there's not a lot that you can do when you're stuck in that situation. And trust me, that BYU defense loves a third and long. They love
Mm-hmm.
third and long situations, and they put TCU in them. And what do we get? 1 out of 10 third down conversions
Yep.
with the first one happening in the second half. I mean, that's just you're not going to win football games that way.
You're really not.
15
Yeah.
first downs, like that's not what's going to do it. You have to produce, and you have to produce consistently.
You really do. Coming into this game, TCU had kind of lived and died by their third down success rate, and they had been
Hmm.
really good at it coming into Saturday night. I think top 15 in the country in late down success rate when you look at third and fourth downs together. But on the other side of the football, BYU was also top 15 defensively in allowing late down successes to
Yep.
opponents. And we saw which side won that battle on Saturday night. And it was one of the big reasons why BYU was able to gain an early lead and then sustain that lead throughout the ball game is because TCU can never consistently get things going. And the early down success has been an issue for TCU all season. We saw that again. That wasn't really out of the ordinary, but when you live and die by your third down success, eventually that bill is going to come due, and we saw it come due in a pretty big way on Saturday.
Absolutely, and I think you're putting yourself in difficult positions because it seems like the recurring theme that we're seeing here is TCU doesn't start fast in the game, and
Mhm.
they don't start fast in their possessions. You can't do that. You can't be stuck in third down like they were last night and not have the ability to kind of get out of it because you don't have the weapons or you don't have the choice of weapons, and so when you start a game in the hole, and as everybody knows, and you start down and you're already kind of whatever it is, 14-0, 17-0, whatever it is, you have to pass now, and they know it. And so you're stuck in a situation. And what that tells me is that the game is being dictated to me. You're not enforcing your will on anyone. You're just kind of showing up and seeing how the game goes and then trying to make the best of the situation. And that's not how you win games. It's
No,
just it's just not you're not going to get at least you're not going to win games against top ranked opponents.
and the reality is TCU should be one of these top ranked opponents. TCU should
Absolutely.
be the one that is asserting itself. TCU is the one that should be dictating how the game goes and the game state and all of those things, because at least as someone who also graduated from TCU, that's what TCU people are accustomed to at this
Absolutely.
point. We saw for 20 years TCU be kind of the dominant player in the game and
Hmm.
say, hey, you're coming to Fort Worth or we're coming to your house. This is the type of football you need to be prepared to play because this is how we're going to play.
And speaking of that, if you remember, I think this issue goes beyond kind of the technical. Obviously, yeah, we need better offensive line play. We need to have a running game. We need to do those are the technical things, right? I think when you move to the other side, there's another aspect that, and this is culture. I think in a way, the culture of the team has kind of gone away from what it was originally found on. If you look, here's the thing. I went to TCU, I think it was like a couple of weeks ago, and I took a tour. I saw, the locker room. I saw all the facilities. I saw all the good stuff,
You went
and
in the snow room.
yeah, the snow room. There's, a mountain range. The Himalayas are right there in a room, and you have all these things, and I'm proud of that. I am, because it's something that the guys that I played with, we all helped build, and I appreciate it, and I think they deserve it. All those athletes deserve it. The amount of time and effort and commitment that they put into that, they absolutely deserve everything they have.
Mm-hmm.
With that comes the idea that you got to stay grounded. You have to be able to stay in the culture that built that house. And I think what's happening is, and I don't know this for certain, but the feeling that I get is that we're feeling ourselves a little bit. I think that over the years, TCU has went from a team that loved being the underdog. I remember when I played and Coach Patterson and they thought we weren't going to win. We loved that. They were like, "Oh, you guys there's no way you have a chance." We're like, "Perfect. Nothing's expected, and we can go do what we want to do." And we loved going out there, playing physical, being a physical team, being a team that dictated and loved to kind of break the will of the opposing team. We were that kind of a team. We loved to be a smash mouth, hit you in the mouth, come at you fast, and do all those things. And I just don't see that kind of personality anymore. And it's not about the fact that, like, oh, they're not what they used to be. That's not what I'm talking about. More of what I'm saying is they need to create an identity for themselves. They need to kind of look back and be like, what got us here and what made us successful, and take the key elements from that, i.e., making adjustments in the second half. When I played, and our team was, I think, the number one scoring team in the third quarter. And the reason for that was because Gary Patterson had no problem throwing out an entire week's worth of playbooks and being like, hey, we're going to the previous week's playbook because this team we'll play better, and we'll come out in a completely different offense than we had studied the entire week, because he saw something and was like, you know what, we need to make a change. Those are the kinds of adjustments that need to be made at halftime, not just, hey, we need to do better. Hey, we should get off the blocks. No, make a change, make an adjustment. There's no reason that TCU should have lost these games. What is 3 games by 19 points, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You lose those games late in ball games in the third and fourth quarter. That's when you should be rising up. That's when you should be shining. That's when you should be putting the exclamation point at the end of a game that you dictated. And I think that's kind of the culture that we need to get back to in order to, if you want to find success. In one of your previous podcasts, I think you said there's a difference between winning games and championships.
Mm.
And I think right now we're a team that's built to win games, and we're not a team that's built for championships. And championships require a mentality. It's why they say defense wins championships. It's a mentality, and the mentality comes from the top.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Defense wins championships means something a little different to me these days because I'm also a Dallas Mavericks fan.
Oh.
But anyways, no, but you make you make such a good point because there are some things that I think we've witnessed over the last 3 years for this team, and they all kind of cropped up again against BYU. This tendency to start slow. Fifth game in the last six where they didn't score a point in the first quarter. They've scored 10 total points in the last six first quarters of football. Just not good enough.
No,
When you look at some of the small things, like they came out in the wrong cleats on Saturday night. They had to
I
change.
heard that.
They had to change their shoes at halftime, right? And we
So I
saw,
heard that.
yeah, we saw the impact in the first half where guys were slipping and falling all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. I was re-watching the game before we got on, and I heard the field reporter say, "Yeah, TCU changed their cleats." That's not the adjustment I'm talking about
Right.
when it comes to the second half.
Right. Right.
Changing your cleats is not what I'm talking about. And and slipping in, that's no. This is not no. That's not. We got it. Let's get into it. Like we didn't start fast enough. We need to start faster. I think I heard Coach Dykes in the post game interview saying the guys were excited to play. We just didn't start fast. It needs to be more. And I'm not talking about emotional. I was always taught a closed fist gets tired, right? A clenched fist gets tired. It's not emotional, it's a motivational thing. There needs to be an identity and there needs to be something to play for that gets these guys up and ready to go and to start quick. I would have loved to see these guys come out, see the Frogs come out in this game right off the bat and start pounding the football, start running the football. I don't care. Offensive line, ready to go or not, just run it. When we were in Miami, we played the Oakland Raiders one year and we ran 14 power. I think we ran it like 17 times in a row. And it was only for the fact that our coach was like, I just want to beat the hell out of this defense. And then we can loosen them up. And guess what? We passed the whole second half. But in the first half, running that ball, it was 2 yards, no gain, 7 yards, no gain, you know, 5 yards, and then 13 yards, 25 yards, touchdown. And you dictate the way the game goes when you're able to use your line and push that defense around. And I think it would have been nice to see that.
It would have been. It would have been. I'm curious too because when you're going against a defense like BYU specifically in this instance, and you know that they are so good against the run,
Mm,
even when they don't load the box. Like last night, we didn't see a ton of
no,
7, 8 man boxes from
we didn't.
BYU's defense. They trusted their defensive line to generate pressure. A lot of times they were drop 7, drop 8, and they still got to Josh in those passing down situations. But even in those running situations, 5 man box, 6 man box, TCU was
Hmm.
really limited. Part of that is because Kavorian Barnes was banged up and didn't play.
For sure.
Jeremy Payne had a few nice runs. He's a tough runner. I think he's grown a lot this season. We saw the freshman John Denman with a nice
That was a
touchdown
great
run.
run. Yeah.
Bounced off a guy, got into the end zone. Uh, but last night and in past games, West Virginia and Iowa State come to mind as well recently. It just seems like there isn't a commitment to that running game. Arizona State's another great example, right? You're up
Yeah.
17 points in the second quarter, and they ran the ball 6 more times the rest of the game.
You, you,
Or Kansas State when you're down 10 coming out in the third quarter and you run it 3 more times the rest of the game. There's really in both of those states, whether you're up a couple scores or down 10 points, there has to be some semblance of balance, and it just feels like TCU's offense hasn't found that this year.
and that's why I think you can't win in the long run just having a one-dimensional offense. It doesn't work. As good as the Hoover McAllister connection is, as much as I love seeing it, as much yak yardage as McAllister gets, it's not going to matter if they always know that that's what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, and I understand that the offensive line is either banged up or they're switching out. Run the ball. Just keep running it. And I'll tell you what, last night I watched the offensive line and I watched the running backs and I watched the few running plays that we had, and I noticed that we did gash them. There were times that we gashed them for 7 here, 10 here. Denman had that great run. It's possible. And what better way to come out in a game where you attack the strength of the opposing defense? They're completely expecting you to pass the ball. Everybody in the stadium knows that you want to pass the ball and that you're going to pass the ball. What if you came out right away and you just hit them in the mouth and you just kept going? Even if it was a 4 and out, you set a tone. We're here to play today. And you came out and you ran the ball and you ran the ball and you ran the ball. They wouldn't know what to do. And then all of a sudden they see that, and now you're opening up the pass because they're a defensive squad. They're going to have hubris. This is what we do. We stop the run. Great. Now load up the box so I can throw it over your head. And I think that's the kind of game that it should have been. It should have been a game where you keep them a little bit off balance. When you're fighting a heavyweight, you got to attack him in the spots that he's not expecting. He's prepared for your strengths. You know what I mean? He's not prepared for you to attack his strengths. And I think that's something that could have been done. And to be honest, throughout the rest of November, that's the challenge that I would take if I'm TCU. Let's set an identity for ourselves in these last games. Let's carry this momentum going into the next season. And even if it doesn't work, just do it. You've won 6 games, you're going to a bowl, just do it. Try to
Yeah.
establish an identity for yourself, establish the run, make your offensive line cohesive by forging them in fire and running that ball down people's throats.
You want to talk about attacking someone's strengths? TCU's defensive strength this year has been run defense, which is a nice change of pace from the past couple of seasons.
Yeah.
BYU ran the ball 39 times, 151 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, about 3.9 yards per carry. But that, you look at Martin, their lead running back, had 4.2 yards per carry. Bachmeier, the quarterback, had 5.9 yards per carry. So there were some really nice runs in there from
Mhm.
BYU, and they did exactly what you said. They attacked TCU on the ground, TCU's strength, and then they really took advantage of TCU's weakness in the secondary because TCU secondary has not been good this year. BYU scores on each of its first 7 drives, doesn't
Yes.
punt until less than 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and really just asserted themselves. I mean, in every way
Mhm.
you look at this game, and every way you want to break it down, BYU did what it wanted to do, asserted its dominance over TCU, and then
Yeah,
just got down to business and bullied
they did.
bullied the frogs all over the field.
Yeah, and BYU is that kind of a team where I think I when I watch them, I feel like they're led by their defense. And when their defense comes out and is ready to go and is able to do the things that it did, it sets the tone for the rest of the team. And I think the offense kind of took it from there. I think, Bear Brockmeyer, I mean, that he's a load. I mean, they say he's what, 225,
Two,
230 or something.
hey, I think
He's
he's bigger than
250.
that.
I think
Yeah,
he's like 250. So that guy's a load. And you saw him run, 17 yards up the middle. um, that's a thing. I mean, we should be spying him. I would have a guy just on him because I think he's that dangerous of a quarterback. He can throw, he can run. He's a big guy. You have it's an offense that is dynamic. It's an offense that is balanced, that has a threat on either side, and you have to show up consistently against an offense like that. Any holes, and I think that's the problem that happened last night. Is you had a lot of explosive plays, you had a lot of inconsistency where they'd make a great play and then they'd come back and give up a chunk, or they just get run through.
yeah.
There has to come a point where you got to change it. Something's got to change, and you got to make you have to shift. You have to change the mentality. There has to be a game, a scheme, change, because they did do whatever they wanted. They controlled the clock. I saw Kalani. He just, at the end of the first half, we got that momentum with the touchdown. Demon ran it in. We're feeling good, but we started to manage the clock too late. It was, I think, 2 minutes and 38 seconds. And then I saw Coach Dykes on the sideline saying, okay, let's slow it down. We should have been slowing it down. This should have been a methodical kind of play down the field, and which culminated in us scoring that touchdown and them having no time. Instead, we come back, we get that touchdown, they come back and have a field goal, which kind of breaks the momentum in half. And then you come out and they carried through into the second half with TCU not scoring much more, and BYU kind of doing whatever they'd like.
So let's get into that a little bit because I hear what you're saying as far as controlling time of possession, especially in kind of the middle 8 there, last half of the second quarter into the third quarter.
Yep.
When you have an offense like the Kendall Briles offense that is so predicated on timing, moving quickly, getting up to the ball, especially after that first down. How challenging can it be for an offense like that to slow down, control the clock a little bit more? Because as much as we like versatility in an offense and in a defense. The
Hmm.
reality is that there are true strengths and true weaknesses to every system. And one of the true strengths of this style of offense is moving with some pace.
Mm.
Is it? Do you think that there are different ways to maybe control the clock, or how challenging can it be to kind of step outside of that strength in the middle of a game and make that kind of adjustment?
It's very tough, and obviously, if it's not something that's native to the philosophy of your offense or the way that you want to run your offense, that's I mean, it's very difficult to try and do that. But this is where it comes in what we were talking about, the offensive line and the run. The reason why BYU is able to kind of control the clock and do what they wanted, and the reason why all day today you watch teams win at the end of games because they have the ability to run the ball and control the clock. When you're a pass heavy offense, it's difficult to try and control the clock with short passes and can we get out of bounds and there's a lot of factors that come into play. You know, does he get stopped in bounds? Can you throw it out of it? Is it going to be complete? There's a lot of different things that go into that. When you're able to run the ball and run the ball effectively, you can control where you want the ball to go. You can control how much time is left on the clock. And if you don't have that, I think that's the problem that you run into. It's great to be fast. That's always an asset to be able to weaponize your offense, move quickly, strike fast. Those are all fantastic things, but you have to be able to control the clock. That's how games are won. I was telling my wife earlier, you show me a stat line. I don't need to see the score. I need to look at two things: time of possession and turnovers. You show me those two things, and I'll tell you who won the game
Hmm.
99% of the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's the issue that you run into. You have two interceptions late. You have, your time of possession is minimal compared to your opponent. You're not going to win the game.
That's interesting because there's so many examples over the last decade of teams losing that TOP battle and coming away, with multiple score victories. But then you look at things like the turnovers and you say, okay, well, they also forced two fumbles, or they also, they took care of the ball, they didn't turn it over at all.
Hmm.
And it feels like it's been one of those. It's always kind of the interesting kind of give and take of a football team, and we saw this in the Gary era, especially in those 2014 and 15 seasons when Doug Meacham and Sonny Cumbie first came on as the
Hmm.
offensive coordinators. Was TCU had always or had largely been a team predicated on defensive strength and asserting itself defensively, and then all of a sudden you have this offensive tempo that is just through the roof,
Right.
and the byproduct of that is that your defensive players are playing 75 to 80 snaps a game when they're used to playing
Exactly.
60, and
Yeah.
and so you have
Yeah.
to find this kind of balance. There have been games this year where TCU has won, but the defense played 87 snaps,
Yeah.
88 snaps.
Hmm.
And I'm curious if, now that we're at game 10, has that taken its toll on a defense that really had some pretty glaring weaknesses since the first week of the season?
I mean, it has to. I think when you have a defense that stays on the field in a game, or two, or whatever, or even the first part of a season, something like that, that's fine. But if it's consistently game after game after game, we're outplaying the offense. It's going to wear on your defense in the form of injuries, in the form of mental lapses, in the form of just conditioning. I think it's you can't really condition a secondary to keep out there and running with a team like BYU who is going to pass and who's going to test you constantly. So when you have the defense on the field and the offense isn't taking up time, they're not, methodically moving the ball or doing any of those things. It wears on a defense, and I think that's what you saw last night is where your strength of being a run defense that typically stops a run is now having holes where you typically your secondary had flashes of greatness. Now it just turned into an onslaught of passing and not even dink and dunk, just explosive play after explosive play stacked on top of one another until we score and then we give you the ball back. We stop you, then we go back and we score again. It's not that one, it's not a fun game to play. And two, it's going to wear on the other side of the ball.
When it starts to snowball like that, as a player, what happens mentally when you start to feel like things are slipping out of control? We saw some some emotion on the sideline for TCU on Saturday night that we hadn't really seen before from Josh specifically,
Hmm.
getting in Eric McAllister's face, pointing his finger, and then we saw kind of the result of that afterwards, where they got back together, and I'm sure Josh in his way, kind of took ownership of that outburst, and they connected for like 3 passes on the next drive, and that was TCU's touchdown drive. But
Yeah.
when things start to feel like they're slipping and you're losing your grip on the game, how challenging is it mentally to stay committed to the game plan, b the overall goal of the opportunity you have in front of you,
Right. It's
winning that football
difficult.
game?
And it's extremely difficult. I mean, you look and we all play the game to win, right? That's the whole point. We play because you want to win, you want to go out there and you want to give your best effort and you want a chance. And I think when you start to see a game slip away and you know that there's no way we're going to win this game, it's hard to get up for that. And but being a professional and being and that's what you're paid for. That's what makes you different than anybody else is resiliency, grit. Those things that come in when it's like, look, we're down, but what can I take out of this? Can we score two more touchdowns? Can we stop them on this drive? Those little things are what get you going. It's not about big chunks of positive plays or things like that. It takes a spark. It's just trying to change the trajectory from going downhill to slowing it down to eventually stopping. And then if you're lucky, getting the chance to reverse that and kind of bring it back and like, okay, let's change the momentum. And you'll see that in the ebbs and flows of games where one play, one interception, one big sack, a turnover can change the momentum of a game like that. Because then all of a sudden your players are inspired, people are motivated, and we can kind of turn the tide. But when you see this like almost like drinking from a fire hose, trying to take a sip of water, it's tough. It's tough to kind of stand in front of that and be like, okay, how do we stop this? How do we stop the bleeding? Right. And that's when you have to lean on your coaches. You have to lean on the game plan. You have to lean on the coordinators and say, what can we do to kind of create a spark here? What do we have to kind of get these guys going and get them out of this rut? And you
No,
can see it on the sideline.
it's interesting because we saw the 2022 version of TCU be able to do that incredibly well, falling
Hmm.
behind multiple scores to Kansas State and Oklahoma State in regulation, coming back and winning both of those football games.
That's
It
right.
seems like throughout that season, they did have that ability to overcome adversity, to stay locked in, to stay on task. And the outcome, I mean, 13-2, right? That's a pretty good
That's right.
outcome at the end of the day. Um, but it's just interesting to me that that hasn't seemed to be the case at times for TCU since then. And you made a point earlier about culture and identity and really understanding what that needs to be for TCU specifically.
Hmm.
When you have an established culture and an established identity for 20 plus years, and then you're kind of the public face of that culture and identity is no longer there. We could talk about this as an example for TCU. We could talk about this as an example for what Alabama is going through right now.
That's right.
There are lots of these examples across college football and across athletics generally. How challenging is it to carry that culture across different coaches? And does it necessarily need to be some sort of monolithic thing, or can culture take on kind of newness and new form and new life when coaches transition in and transition out, and still maintain kind of that level of expectation and excellence that people have grown accustomed to?
Hmm. Uh, Look, I think when you have the organization as a whole and you're hiring that new head coach, you can go one of two ways. You can go in the way of this is the way we've done things. This is the way that has been established. We'll take TCU for example. We are a blue collar team. We are aggressive. We are defense led. We are a smart physical team that adjusts when we need to. We're adaptable and there's grit. And you can take that ball of culture and you can say, okay, we're searching for a new head coach. This is what we do. Can you do this? Can you fit into this? Right. Or you can take the other road and say, that worked for us in the past. What are you bringing in that's new? And try something different. And because it is a different coach. And in some ways, it's not fair to expect a new coach to come in and follow the old ways of a coach that was established there. I understand that. Everybody's got
Mhm.
their way, They're professional too. They get paid too. So the organization, I think, is kind of the initial dictator of what that is, of if do we want to do this or do that. Um, Carrying that culture through, I'm all about bringing in, a fresh coach, a fresh perspective, changing things. When I see things like Coach Dykes, and this is not a shot at Coach Dykes, this is just his way, right? His big thing is do your job,
Hmm.
right? That's the thing. And I get it. Bill Belichick, that do your job, everybody do their job. I'm not, I personally, that doesn't get me up to do my job. That's efficiency, and that speaks to execution, but it doesn't speak to the culture of what our team is. When I was playing, the players wore shirts that said MTXE,
Hmm.
and it said mental toughness, extra effort. There were literally periods in practice, 30-minute periods that Coach Patterson built into practice called GATA. GATA. Do you remember what that stood for?
Yep. Get after
Get
that
after
ass.
their ass. That's
Yeah.
it. Get after that ass. And that was it. It was a period of just here's the situation, go at each other. It's two dogs, here's one piece of meat. Who's going to get it? And no matter what happened, that wasn't done for result. That was done to maintain the culture and the edge that he wanted to have in his team. And I think that's something that's lacking right now. You see these guys, and we keep talking about like, oh no, they're excited to play, or oh no, like we just didn't start fast, this time for the sixth time in a row or the fifth time in a row. Something's got to change. Clearly, there's an issue here where guys are prepared to do their job. They're prepared to kind of go into these games and do their job, but they're not ready to do their job. They're not
Mm.
motivated to do their job. They're not sitting there like I remember we got in trouble because we wore all black once. And the alumni was like, you can't, no, you can't do that. And I remember Marvin Gobbolt and I went into Coach Patterson's office and we were like, we're wearing all black this game, coach. And he looked at us and he was like, yeah. And we were like, yeah. He's like, okay. And we won a game we weren't supposed to win. I don't remember who it was against, but it was wild because we had this mentality of we got this, we're gonna do this. And you're motivated no matter who it is. And when you go out onto that field and you see Goliath, you get excited because you're just like the headlines are gonna say that David just knocked the shit out of Goliath.
Yeah.
That's what you get motivated by. That's why we liked being the underdog. We liked it when people didn't expect anything from us. And I think that kind of audacity is what's missing from this team. I think they are very efficient. They do things really well. There's flashes of greatness. It's immensely talented, a very talented team. But I think that you're not getting the cohesiveness and you're not getting kind of that flow and the rolling part of it because the a bit of the culture is missing. And I think when you have a history the way we do, it sometimes might be good to look back and say, what can I cherry pick off of that can really help my team now that's fit into the fabric of this university and of this program?
Yeah. How much do you think, and this is a conversation that will continue into perpetuity now, how much do you think rev share and NIL has an impact in this specific example? Because let's be real, Oregon players are getting paid, Indiana players
Hmm.
are getting paid, Georgia players are getting paid, Ohio State players are getting paid.
Yeah.
But there is, and as someone who for years and years and years has shouted that, hey, schools are making tons of money off of these guys, they should probably get a cut of that pie, right?
Oh yeah.
um, how challenging can it be as maybe a 19 or 20-year-old to stay motivated when the paycheck is already hit the bank account, right?
I was just
I
talking
mean,
about this.
we
Yeah.
saw we saw the example from Calzada, the Kentucky backup quarterback now,
Mm.
uh, who was catching some heat online from some Kentucky fans, and his response was to post a video holding, I don't know, maybe 5-6 grand in $100 bills and just kind of waving it in front of the camera. And
Yeah.
that guy's 26, so he should probably know better. But
Yeah.
just how does that really truly kind of play into it? And I want to think that it's still possible to maintain that kind of fabric of culture in
Hmm.
this era, because I think we see really clear examples of it other places.
For
But
sure.
just what do you think the challenge maybe is specific to TCU?
Well, I think, look, anytime money gets involved and you start paying someone to do a job, they become a professional, right? So college football is no longer an amateur sport. It is absolutely a professional or semi-pro um, type of league, right? In the NFL, I never knew this until I remember a teammate of mine told me about it, where they ask this question when it comes contract time. So you're renegotiating your contract. A question that comes up is, how does he react to having money?
Mm,
Because the thing is, guys have made a career of getting to the NFL because they're hungry, because they have to feed their family, because they have to, they grew up poor, or whatever it was. And not everybody, but a good majority of guys did that. And it changes when all of a sudden you sign $100 million contract. You're set. Your generations are set, and now we're all comfortable, right? You have to find another thing to motivate you to play. And for me, what I found with those players that continued to be motivated even when they were played was, it was this idea of, I'm playing to the best version of me, or I'm playing to how good can I get? Because you can look at it one of two ways. I have money now and I'm comfortable, so like I'm not going to get hurt. I'm just going to kind of coast from here on out. Or you can look at it as, I have money now, which means all the problems that I had before that took up bandwidth in my mind are gone.
mm,
Now I can focus 100% of my time and my energy on the craft that I want to perfect for myself. Will it ever be perfect? No. But now have the opportunity to get paid and set my family up and have no issues, but to make sure I'm as good at this as I can be.
mm,
Because if it was the case that money all of a sudden didn't allow you to be the best player you could be, then why do we have a Hall of Fame? Tons of guys have been paid millions and millions of dollars. Why are they still good at what they do? And that's
mhm,
because there was a sense of self-worth, there was a sense of commitment to a bigger organization, to your program, and there was a sense of commitment to your teammates. And I think that's the kind of thing that you have to look for. And I think successful teams in this league moving forward, I mean, right now it's still kind of the wild, wild west with the NIL. I don't know how long this salary cap is going to last, but I think when you are able to find players where their calling is beyond the money is a problem because they either have issues at home, or they need the money to solve a problem. And that's the way they see it. Once they get that, if that's solved, now they can focus their attention on what the important thing is, which is winning championships, which is creating a legacy and building something for themselves. And I think when you find the right players who are into that, that won't be an issue of
mm.
paying players.
It feels like that's what the kind of the secret sauce that Texas Tech has hit on this year,
Exactly.
right? Because I mean, we've only read 5-6 million words on what the Red Raiders did this offseason, and Cody Campbell, to his credit, had the ability to contribute in that way, and said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it because I want to see Texas Tech win titles."
Mhm.
And it feels like they hit on. I mean, David Bailey, talk about a
Yeah.
defensive end, right? So that guy's been a freak this year. Jonathan Rodriguez, or sorry, Jacob
Mhm.
Rodriguez.
Yep.
Um, like they went out and they did it, and
They
so
went
we've
out and they
we
got their players, yeah.
and all of those guys got paid, and
Mhm.
the 26 and 27 classes that are coming in behind them, where Texas Tech has gone and said, hey, 5-star offensive tackle, you're going to be a Red Raider, and here's your 3-year agreement that we're gonna give you when you get on campus. It feels like they've done a really good job identifying A, talent that can help them win football games, and B, people who have the mentality that you're talking about, where the money isn't the end all be all. The money is just the thing that allows them to focus on football.
Exactly. And I think when you're at the negotiating table with these kids and you're sitting there and you go, the money's going to take care of itself. You're going to make a lot of money. Congratulations, you're rich. Let's talk football.
Yeah.
Here's what we want to do. This is what we want to get to. This is the kind of culture we want to create. This is the kind of program we want to have. So now the dollars aren't what you're wearing on your chest, it's the logo of that team. Now that's what's motivating you. Yeah, we're all paid. Okay, cool. I want to win.
Hmm.
And I think that's the big thing. And that's the thing that if you're an athlete who has the pride and who takes pride in what you do, that's all that matters. What do you see at the end of a lot of guys' career, right? Guys will have 12, 13-year careers, have been making tons of money throughout their entire NFL, professional life. And at the end of their careers, what do? I'll take a money hit so I can go to a team and win a championship. That's all right. I'll take less. I don't mind taking less. I'll sign a 1-year deal because I want to win a championship.
Hmm.
That's what matters. At the end of the day, we play these sports. The benefits, fantastic. Love the money, love the fame, all the celebrity, all the stuff, right? At the end of the day, you do it because you want to win. Because at the end of the day, when you walk across the street, you want somebody to look, there goes that man. He's a champion. That guy
Yeah.
did that. He was amazing, right? That's what
Yeah.
you play for. So at least I do. That was my thing. So I think when you are able to identify those players that where the commitment goes beyond how much are you going to pay me, and it's more toward as long as I'm paid and I'm taken care of, my problems are solved. Great, let's go win some football games.
Mhm.
I think
Love it.
that's kind of what you have to kind of get to, and I think Texas Tech did that well. I think Indiana did that well. I think you have a lot of programs that found those guys who are like, let's go change the colors at the top. Sick of seeing the same people. Let's change it up, right?
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think TCU has that ability. Definitely have money. Definitely have enough of a crop of prospects in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, this is football. Texas is football. So like there's enough talent here. There's more than enough money here. Let's get it going, right?
Yeah. And there's the leadership alignment, which I think is
Yes.
not a small aspect of this whole thing. Where, and I talked about this last night with Steven Johnson on our live show. You've got all of the people that need to be pulling in the same direction are pulling in the same direction. From the
Hmm.
chancellor of the university on down to the support staff to the equipment guys, everybody's pulling in the right direction and in the same direction. You
Yep.
have the ability to fund the thing. You have everybody on board with funding the thing. Now you just got to go do the thing, right? It just
Gotta go
feels
do
like
the thing.
the last and hardest step is just going
Is
and
to
doing
do
it, right?
it.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And
well,
and it yeah, good.
oh, I was just gonna say TCU is 6-4 now.
Hmm.
They're tied for 10th in the Big 12. Sonny
Yeah.
Dykes said prior to the season that the goal was Arlington. The expectation was Arlington. They are not going to see Arlington. They
No.
are 3-4 in the league. Those dreams are gone. Those dreams were gone before this loss to BYU because of the loss to Iowa State.
Yeah.
What it's interesting to look at a 6-4 team that is already qualified for a bowl and feel like they're kind of on the ropes. But it, to me at least, feels like TCU's kind of on the ropes right now. And is that because of unmet expectations, do you think? Is that because of just the inconsistencies we see on the football field? Is it because we don't maybe hear about the amount of buy-in that TCU has like we do with a place like Tech or Indiana? What do you
Mhm.
think maybe, and maybe you don't feel the same way, so correct me if I have kind of placed a thought on you, but
No.
for me, like it feels like TCU's got its back against the wall, the solution seems to just be kind of right there in front of them.
I agree with you. I agree 100%. And I think to answer your question just outright, it's all of it. I think
Mm.
that those previous years that we talked about, the past 20 or so years, talking about the traditions and the expectation, I remember when we started getting going and winning football games and getting ranked and doing those things, I remember Coach Patterson telling us, this is the expectation now. The
Mhm.
expectation is that we're going to win 10 plus football games a year. That's what's expected. That's what the fans are expecting. That's what the alumni expects. It's what the program expects. And so I think that expectation still exists today. I think based on our past, 6 games isn't gonna do it for us. I don't think anybody in Horn Frog Nation is looking around and going 6 games like we made it to a bowl. We're good. Yeah, we made it to a bowl. That's the standard. That's we expect to go to a bowl every year. We want to go to a good bowl. We want to go
Mhm.
to the big bowls. We want to win 9, 10 games. We want to be top three. Obviously you want to win the Big 12, but you want to at least, if you're having an off season or a bad season, we're top two, top three in the position that BYU currently sits. I think and contending for things. So yeah, I feel like you're 6-4. You've lost 2 in a row. You've the games you've lost late. There's inconsistency in your gameplay. There's inconsistency in your scoring. Yeah, I think you feel a bit like we're a little punch drunk right now. We're just kind of on the ropes and not really knowing up from down or which way we need to go. And that's why for me, I think you take these next couple games and you set yourself up. You set an identity for yourself. You have nothing to lose. Let's just be honest about it. You go 0-4 in November, you're still going to go to a bowl game. It's fine. The record sucks and it looks terrible. You're not going to go to a great bowl game. But why not take these last two games and try something different? Run the ball. set a new identity, see if it works. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. You can start fresh next year. But
Yeah.
try and get a spark going to kind of wake yourself up a little bit, get the smelling salts out and get yourself going so that way maybe there's a spark that we can take from this into next year. Maybe we can focus on the lines now and focus on running the ball, or maybe changing up or disguising or changing schemes, doing something different to kind of set a culture to get a spark going for my team, so that way now we go into next year with our chest out and ready to play and start fast.
It's just so interesting because it feels like this is the same kind of conversation Marshall Newhouse and I sat on this show a little over a year ago now after TCU's lost to Houston.
Mm.
Going into that bye week, they were sitting there 3-3, and he said some of the same exact stuff that you're saying right now about regrouping, figuring it out, trying some new things, and they went on a tear. Right, they won 6 out of their last 7, finished 9-4
Yeah.
on the year. The challenge is, it's November 16th when we're recording this. They
Yeah, I
they
know.
go on the road to Houston, who has suddenly looked more than competent and
Right.
consistent.
Right.
And then they finish with Cincinnati, who still has an outside shot at Arlington.
Yeah.
And so you're not only, playing a little bit for pride at this point, but you're playing two teams who still have significant goals that they want to achieve this year. So
Yeah.
the hill's only getting taller,
Hmm.
right? It's not smooth sailing from here.
It is
And
not. You can't ride this one out.
no, you cannot. And it's just, I'm just curious to know, how long do we keep having these same conversations every year?
Well,
Right.
that's what I mean as far as culture change. Clearly,
Yeah.
I think in your previous podcast you talked about how that do your job mentality worked when Coach Dykes first got here, and how you know the idea of doing that, it was what won games. And recently, in year 4 or so, it seems like that's kind of fallen on deaf ears, and it gets to a point where the barking dog in the background just becomes white noise. Everybody becomes Charlie Brown. It just all sounds like womp 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 womp
Hmm.
womp womp. You got to change it. You got to change the record. You got to switch things out. You got to, and for us, I remember that's why we went with the black uniforms. I think we had hit a point and we were like, you know what, we're changing this. I'm sick of wearing this white and purple. I want to wear black, because that's what I want to go out and be a villain. And I
Mm.
think we went out there and we did that, and that sparked something, and then from there it changed things. And it could be something as small as that. I'm not saying to go out and change your uniforms. God knows TCU does that enough, but but I love it. I love it. I love all the uniforms. I dig it. I half the time I don't even know it's us. I'm like, wait, oh, that's us. We have red in our colors. When did we get red? Okay. So am I saying to go change your no, but there's things that you can do now. And honestly, I would flip that mentality wise and be like, good. I'm glad we're playing Houston. I'm glad we're playing Cincinnati. I'm glad we're not playing, Sisters of Mary, Mary Clark University, and not and some no name. I want it to be good teams. Let's go test this stuff out against those good teams. Let's go see what we can do. People are expecting us to lose anyway. Let's shock the world and hit them in the mouth and see what happens.
Mm.
Right.
Love it.
And I
Love
think
it.
I think that that's a huge thing you can do. And that's a simple thing like that could change the momentum going into next year drastically.
Well, let's hope it happens.
Yeah.
Let's hope it happens. Anthony, thank you so much for your time. That's going to do it for this episode of Frogs Insider. Friend, you are welcome back whenever you want. This was
Man, I
fantastic.
love it. I appreciate it. Great
Um,
talking to you, buddy.
Absolutely great talking to you as well. Melissa will be back later this week with her Houston preview as TCU heads down to face the Cougars and Willie Fritz. Maybe another guy getting a contract extension this offseason. It's the offseason of extensions, it feels like,
Here we
for
go.
coaches. Andy Drill will also be back this week, I promise. Been a busy few weeks with basketball starting up. And hey, we got some basketball to talk about, got some baseball to talk about, all coming up on future episodes of Frogs Insider. To Anthony, to all of you listening, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And we will talk to you next time. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.